Hello everyone, this is Piero San Giorgio, author of Survive the Economic Collapse and many other books. Today, I'm very happy to greet Mr. Shlomo Gordon. Shlomo, Boker Tov, Shalom, welcome to the show.
Hi Piero, thanks for having me on. Boker.
Now, for people who may not know, I have done quite a lot of work in Israel. When I was in the software industry, I've started companies in Tel Aviv and Herzliya, and I've been working with extensively with companies in technology and selling to companies in Israel like Teva, like Elbit, like so many Converse and everyone. So I've been going many times. So people are always surprised of my knowledge of Israel and how much I know and how much I appreciate the qualities, the landscape. I've always been extremely well received and people have been very friendly and welcoming to me. So I have a very positive attitude with Israel. So I want to shout out to all my Israeli friends who listen to the show, especially my friends in Givat, in the Sayeret Givati, who sent me this T-shirt.
Nice.
They and I think I have some friends who've been in the Tank Corps, which I believe you've been into as well. So thank you very much.
I'm still in reserves and in tanks.
Good. Well, thank you very much for coming to the show. So you're a young Israeli who moved from United States and who is now a candidate to be member of Knesset in the upcoming elections next year. So can you tell us a little bit about your background? What brought you to this position and this and to wanting to be a member of the Israeli Parliament, the Knesset?
Well, thanks so much for having me on, and I didn't realize you had so much experience with Israel and Israelis, and I'm glad to hear that you've had positive experiences. I've had quite the journey. It's really been a blessed life. I grew up in the U.S., and when I was 13, I was in Israel for the first time. And I was always interested in Judaism. I wasn't from a religious family, but something just clicked. I just felt home. I felt like this is where I need to be. I actually wanted to run away from the group and stay in Israel. I had all sorts of crazy thoughts in my head when I was 13. And I realized at some point I said, I think my mom will come look for me and she won't be happy that I ran away. And so I made up my mind when I was 13. I said, I'll go back to America. I'll finish high school. But at the age of 18, I'm not going to do the college thing like everyone else. I'm going to make Aliyah. I'm going to come to Israel. And I didn't know what exactly I would do. And I didn't even make any plans when I was during those 5 years in America. I just said, I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to go. And so when I was 18, I actually did a Birthright Trip, which Birthright is usually just a 10-day trip to connect more to Jewish identity, to Zionism, to all that stuff. I actually wasn't a huge fan of the trip, but I got it for free, so I definitely had a great time. I don't know if I agree with the premise and the goals and the angles that they try to sell, but the fact of the matter is I had a nice free 10-day trip, and I had a free trip back, but I just didn't use it because I didn't want it. And then I had a 3-month tourist visa, and during that time I checked out all the things, and I decided that, yes, I would go to the army, and I would do all that stuff, and full citizenship and that whole path. And so I spent some time on a kibbutz called Sde Eliyahu, where I studied Hebrew, and I also worked in organic agriculture, and it was a religious kibbutz, so I was able to get a little bit more connected to those aspects of my roots, as well as connecting to the land of Israel itself. And I did the Israel Trail for 2 months. I was hiking, and I did a bunch of other things. I went to the army. I was in a group of lone soldiers in Kibbutz Lavi, also a religious kibbutz. I served in tanks, so I was what's called a lone soldier. It's really since it's a conscription army, usually the paychecks that people get aren't significant enough. People are still living with their families, but when you're a lone soldier, so the government covers the cost of rent, and you get a higher paycheck. So it was nice, and I was living on a kibbutz, and so the government paid the kibbutz. So it was a nice setup, and so I did my service. afterwards I studied biophysics in Bar Ilan University. And while I was studying there, that's where the passion for, I always was interested in politics. It was always in the back of my mind, but the way that I would speak about it was still just ideas and catchphrases and things that sismaot, as we say in Hebrew, like special words that like you have this power word where it's like someone says, "Oh, you Zionist," right? And that's supposed to mean something, right? So I was not on that bad of a level, but I was still like most people where you're not really thinking about how things work. You're not really using analytical thinking. And what basically, and I was like, my first time voting, I voted for Bayit Yehudi, Jewish Home, and then I got sick of them, and I voted for Jewish Home when I wasn't wearing a kippah, and they're a religious party, and then when I was wearing a kippah, I voted for Likud, I voted for Netanyahu's party, and knowing what I know today, I would never vote for either of these parties ever again. I basically what caused me to get out of that matrix was about 3 years ago. For the first time, I went up to the Temple Mount. It was on Jerusalem Day. I wasn't wearing a kippah. To go up to the Temple Mount, I put on a kippah, but I wasn't like a religious Zionist per se. I had some part of me bringing me this way, some part of me bringing me this way, and basically I saw that there was. I was always fascinated. I always said I would like to go up to the Temple Mount. I mean, it's the place where the temple was. It's the place where a Jew should be drawn to the most. And I saw that on Facebook that there was this group that was going up at the Temple Mount. I thought that Jews couldn't go up at all, that the government didn't let Jews go up at all. And so I was like, oh, this must be a special thing for Jerusalem Day that they're letting Jews go up. I better go up. And then I go there and I find Temple Mount activists who are for, Jewish religious rights. We're talking about basic religious freedoms. We're talking about basic human rights. We're not talking about some crazy zealous thing like some people might try to make it out. And I went up for the first time and I realized, oh, there's actually there's days from Sunday to Thursday between these hours, a Jew can go up. And what happens when a Jew goes up? And if a Christian goes up, it's also, they're a little bit more free to move around and stuff, but it's really like everything's completely back. It's bizarre. Like the Muslims are the overlords, and then Christians also are allowed to walk around, but they're considered visitors. They're not allowed to go into any of the buildings. And then Jews are like a different level. Jews have to be escorted by, and it's crazy. It's like Twilight Zone. Israeli police. You walk in like this herd, and you've got Israeli police all around you, and you can't like stop and take pictures or something. Like you have to constantly. They just like you have to keep moving. There's like a set spot where like people can stand, and if someone starts like moving their lips in prayer, a police officer, the Waqf guys, the Islamic Waqf that Israel for some reason gives custodial authority over to them, they'll say, "Oh, that Jew's moving his lips," and then the Israeli police, Israeli citizens are paying for it, will come over and tell you don't pray, and if you keep doing it, then they will take you off the mountain. And if you do something like, in Judaism, you're not allowed to prostrate on stones anywhere other than on the Temple Mount. So there have been Jews who have prostrated on the stones, and then they get completely arrested. So it's just this bizarre situation that I wasn't aware of, because I thought that Jews weren't able to go up at all. And then when I saw, it was like worse. It's like we are able to go up, but like our own government is literally persecuting us and preventing I'm not blaming the Muslims. I have nothing to complain to any non-Jew about. Everyone's like, I don't expect the Waqf, if you give the Waqf authority to decide what, and you make deals with the Jordanians, because the Waqf are based in Jordan, you give them this authority, you can't expect them to do anything other than to implement Sharia. Like, you can't expect them to do anything else. So I have no complaints to the Waqf or the Islam or Muslims or the Jordanians, Jordan is a joke country. I mean, Jordan is completely held up by Western powers, is held up by Israel. The Mossad is helping Jordanians deal with any, dissent, any of the Palestinian dissent in Jordan. So, it's like Jordan is a fake country. I have no complaints to the Jordanian government or anything. I can only complain to my own people and to my own government. And that's what I realized being on the Temple Mount. I realized, whoa, if I thought stuff was screwed up in Israel, if I thought there was a lot of bureaucracy, if I thought that we weren't doing enough to bring Western Jews to Israel, if I thought that, the housing crisis was a problem, then it was like, whoa, the people running this country are completely insane and have no national pride, have no values. They're completely Machiavellian, and I've got to do something about this. And so I became a Temple Mount activist about 3 years ago. And one of my friends from the Temple Mount heard me talking about different political ideas that I had always had in my head, but I didn't have anyone to really talk to about them. He said, you got to check out Moshe Feiglin. He just started a new party called Zehut. So this was a little bit after I started becoming a Temple Mount activist. And so basically after about a year of Temple Mount activism that mixed with Zehut activism, I said, you got to pick what you're going to do. I don't think that there's going to be a certain amount of Jews. A lot of Jews don't know that they can go up to the Temple Mount, or they're afraid. They think that they're going to get rocks thrown at them, which did happen plenty of times. And there were the police officers were actually Druze. They weren't even Jewish, but they were Israeli police that were killed from terrorists that came from the Temple Mount and had stashed weapons on the Temple Mount. That's how you know that a place isn't really holy to the other side, when they hide weapons on it and they use it to kill police officers. So just this crazy situation, I realized that it's not like we're going to get to a certain amount of Jews that go up to the Temple Mount and then there's going to be this awareness this awareness revolution that's going to happen. No, we have to go through things politically, and recently I've really realized that we have to go through things with alternative media, which I want to set up alternative media here in Israel. I've got a lot of ideas. I'm trying to work with different people outside of Israel and inside of Israel to try to establish an alternative media here, because that's something that in the West was very much necessary. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I said, I'm all for Temple Mount activism, but the main thing needs to be actual political policy. And when I found that there's a party that is for a one-state solution and Israeli sovereignty in Judea, Samaria, Gaza, and of course on the Temple Mount. I mean, that's all of Jerusalem is already. If you go into East Jerusalem, you have Israeli police since the 80s, since the Jerusalem in the 80s. The Arabs who live in East Jerusalem, they can go. They're in like a weird place. They can go anywhere in the Palestinian Authority and in Israel, but then they have like residency. They can't vote in either place, but they can go anywhere. They can study anywhere. So, it's kind of a weird situation that I'm trying to end with a one-state solution. But the fact of the matter is that there are Israeli police in East Jerusalem. There aren't Israeli police in Ramallah, but there are Israeli police in East Jerusalem. There are Israeli police in West Jerusalem and North Jerusalem and South Jerusalem, all around, and only on the Temple Mount, in the Holy of Holies, in the most holy place in Judaism, where there's this Islamic shrine that was built not as a mosque. The Al-Aqsa on the southern end of the Temple Mount is a mosque. That's true, and it's not even in the holy. It's not even in an area that's holy to Jews. The Muslims can have Al-Aqsa Mosque. It's perfectly fine. They try to call the entire complex Al-Aqsa or Haram al-Sharif, but this is disingenuous. It's not true. There's a mosque on the southern end. It's called Al-Aqsa. There's another mosque in the southeastern corner. It's called Masjid al-Marwani, that was built only recently. But in the center of the Temple Mount, where the temple existed, where 50 years ago, they even call it Beit al-Maqdis, which is the same as the Hebrew Beit HaMikdash, which is the name for the temple. That's the place where the temple was. It was built not as a mosque. You can see it has a dome that's different than other mosques. It was with this octagonal structure. It's a very beautiful building. It was built as a shrine. It was built as a shrine to preserve the location of the temple. And so now that Jews are back, it should be recognized that that's what this is. It's not a mosque. And now for political reasons, they've turned it into a mosque, and they call the whole thing Al-Aqsa, and they turn it into this whole political thing, which again, you can tell that something is not holy to them when they use it for politics. I don't think that they would use Mecca or Medina in this way. I don't think that though maybe nothing is holy to, I don't know. To me, if a place is holy to you, you don't use it for politics. You don't use it for war. And for them, it seems clear that mosques are perfectly legitimate places to say, go out and kill Jews, and that's the place to do it. So maybe my interpretation of what holiness is just they have a different idea of what holiness means.
So
the same way
that's what brought you to the politics?
Yeah, that's what brought me to it. And when I started studying more and more, I always understood that there was a lot of Israeli bureaucracy, and I was always more on the free market side, but I started studying, all sorts of different, while I was studying biophysics, I think I was studying more, political science. I was studying all of the sort of what today is called libertarian. It used to be called liberal, but today it's called libertarian. In Switzerland, I really like Switzerland, by the way, that it's this totally libertarian country with direct democracy as much as possible, and actual democracy and actual liberty, and very much understanding if you want peace, prepare for war. All of these ideas. If there's a country, a lot of people think like they want Israel to be like Norwegian countries, or they want Israel to be like America, or they want, I don't know, they have different ideas. I want Israel to be like Switzerland, actually. I think that Switzerland...
we have a lot of common, we have a few common things, and in Switzerland we have the money of the rich Israelis, so it's, we have links with Israel, for sure.
Yeah, I think that Switzerland they really got it right. They kept their sovereignty. They were smart enough not to join the EU. I mean, so it's really common sense. It's wisdom that is passed down. I feel like the Swiss, I would like to go to Switzerland someday. I feel like the Swiss just have this common sense that has just been passed down from generation to generation.
You're welcome. There's low-cost flights from Tel Aviv to Geneva and Zurich every day. So it's you're most welcome to come. By the way,
well, now that I have a friend, maybe I will.
Good. By the way, I want to say this is how I heard about you. It's from libertarian and free economics, Austrian economics, if you want, channels. And I saw some comments and I saw some people mentioning you, and that's how I came to the idea to talk to you. I have a few questions to start definition. You mentioned at some point Zionism. And so I'd like to ask you two questions that are linked to that. First of all, what is your definition of Zionism in 2018, 70 years after the creation of Israel? And what is your definition of what is Israel?
At this point, Zionism, I would say the original Zionists would have been in 516 BC, the Ezra, Nehemiah, Zerubbabel, who returned from the exile in Babylon, and it was called they called it Shivat Zion, the return to Zion.
Yes.
So that was a form of Zionism. So Zionism has so many different ideas tied into it. It's like one person will define Zionism, I'm the biggest Zionist in the world. How another person defines Zionism, I'm the biggest anti-Zionist in the world. It's as far as I'm concerned, it's a term that I can give you my definition, but it doesn't really matter because people won't take Shlomo Gordon's definition. And so for me, it's like I'd rather just not even use that word because it means something different to someone else. I could say that Zionism is about what is Zion? Zion is the Temple Mount. So in a way, if Zion is being for Jewish sovereignty on the Temple Mount, then I'm the biggest Zionist that there is. Now there's a party in the Knesset, the Avodah Party. They changed their name to Hamachane Hatzioni, the Zionist camp, and therefore creating a Palestinian state and giving up the Temple Mount that would be part of that Palestinian state. Most likely, I mean, or having the UN or United or American troops or something controlling it. By the way, for anyone who wants America to get out of the Middle East, a two-state solution is a great way to not have that happen, because a lot of the agreements, if you look into the fine details, a lot of times they've had American troops separating between the Palestinian state and the Jewish state. So it's a great way to keep American troops in the Middle East for the neocons, if that's what you're into. So whereas my party is for ending American aid to Israel because it hurts our sovereignty, we have no problem if America wants to leave the Middle East. Go for it. America screwed up a lot of things in the Middle East. It's nice that I'm speaking to a Swiss person because I won't get antagony from you. America has screwed up plenty of things in the Middle East. If people thought that the Iraq War was for oil, it was for all sorts of different things. The Israel lobby thought that taking out Saddam Hussein would be a good idea. But again, it's never a good idea to have people who live on the other side of an ocean deciding for you. Even if I'm Jewish and they're Jewish, I don't want them deciding for me. Their head isn't in the right place. They don't have the same clearness of thought and clearness of vision that someone who has his feet on the ground here does. For them, things are numbers. Okay, so we'll have to kick, 20,000 Jews out of their homes, and we'll swap these lands, and we'll do this, and classic exile Jewish thinking, okay? And I thank God, have had this amazing experience. I've reconnected to my homeland. I've reconnected to my people. We have our own army. We have our own startups. We have our own thriving civilization. We have, a very much. If you look at just like the numbers behind things, if you look at, for example, a graph of population by age. If you look at China, for example, You'll see like the elderly people, and then it like looks like a Chinese building. It goes like this, and then in the younger side, you see there's way more males than females. They're gonna have a lot of problems. If you look at America, you can see like the baby boom and then the millennials. I think it'll be fine. It'll be okay, but they might want to take in some immigration. But in before all the alt-right people, whatever Americans decide, if you guys want immigration, take in immigration. If you want to start having kids, start having kids. Whatever you guys decide. Like I'm an Israeli nationalist. I'm all for you guys. I want Americans to succeed. It's a beacon of freedom in the world. Do what's good for you. Whatever you decide. You want immigration, you don't want immigration, whatever you want, it's fine. And I'm against any foreign interests that are trying to influence otherwise. But the fact of the matter is that Israel, if you look at the ages and the population, it's just a perfect pyramid. It's just like lots of young people who are, gonna, make startups and are gonna work in all sorts of stuff and are gonna be. I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of hope for the future of Israel. So Israel's, this thriving thing. We have all of these good energies going forward. We have good relations with nations in the East and the West. And so to act like the 51st state is not beneficial to us. For a time it was never beneficial. There were always negative aspects to it. But for a time you could say that the negative aspects were worth it because there were more benefits of it. Today, it's not the case anymore. It's best for Israel to do our own thing with all the love for the American people and everything. We don't want to be the 51st state. The American people, more and more of them, don't want for Israel to be the 51st state. And then there's all these Christian Zionists that have a lot of love for me, and I have a lot of love for them. But their energy is going in the wrong place. It's this bear hug. That you're getting bear hugged so strong that at some point you realize that your arms are stuck and you can't actually decide for yourself. You realize that there's actually this whole establishment that's deciding for you.
Yeah,
it's not a good.
Be careful of people who love you for the wrong reason. That's my warning about Christian Zionists. But I just want to rebound on something. I wanted to ask you this question later, but while you were on the topic, you mentioned there is a lot of influence of America, a lot of money, and I've seen that you're in the program of. We're going to talk about that maybe later. Of the program of your party, you want to stop that money flow because, and I agree, I've seen it. it creates too much influence, too much corruption, and it biases a lot of policies. Now, a lot of people may retort and say, well, hold on a second, but isn't Israeli, and I would say American Jews more than Israelis, but we know how the link is strong between the Israeli government and the diaspora of Jewish people living abroad. And they would say, isn't this lobbying, this Jewish or pro-Israeli lobby, to be more accurate, isn't it convincing American politics to point number one, give the money to Israel so that it's a sort of loop that feeds back, but also influence American politics in two fields which are, I think, very dangerous in the end for Jews and Israel. That's my opinion. We can discuss this another time. It's dangerous because it creates, because it pretends to fight against anti-Semitism, like Southern Poverty Law Center and all these lobbying organizations. And at the same time, ADL or the IPAC is you have 100% of American politicians who are terrorized to be against these lobbies, and therefore they pander. And I would say sometimes they're not even corrupt. They don't need to be corrupted. They will say yes to any policies that will go towards going towards the policies of the Israeli government interests. I'm not saying it's Israel's interest, and I'm not saying it's Jewish interest. This is a very different thing. And so there is this mixed influence, at the very least, which I think is damaging the US. I think it's damaging Israel, but it's my opinion. It'd be interesting to have yours. And I think it's damaging, and this is where it concerns me. It's damaging the world, especially the Middle East and Africa. And this is one of the reasons of this damage, is that we have all these people coming in Europe now. So this is why I voice my opinion, is because if it was just about Israel and America and Iraq, well, I can have an opinion and I can say yes or no, but it's not my problem. But today, in the globalized world, when you have Middle Eastern people, because of Iraq being destabilized, because of these policies, and because of that coming into my country and raping my children, or trying to, because I can defend myself, but still, they will kill and rape my people. Well, then I have a big problem. And what I say to my Israeli friends is, be careful. And because on the internet, you start to see massive, I wouldn't say this, and this was my next question, is how do you define anti-Semitism? But before, let's talk about how do you define Israel and so on. But, the problem is that you will have a rise of, I think, it's not for the right reason, and I think there is no good reason for that, in fact. There will be a rise of anti-Jewish sentiment because of all this loop and this complex system. And this is very dangerous because in the end, Jewish people are not many people in the world. It's 20 million maybe? 15? I don't know.
I totally agree with you. I think you nailed it. I'm trying to think of what I can even add on. And just to show you, to go even further and show you how much it's not in Israel's interest, this whole system. Stanley Fisher, who's an American, and he's a Jew and he's an Israeli citizen, and he lived in Israel, and he was the head of Bank of Israel. And people in Israel think, oh, Stanley Fisher's so great because the Israeli economy was doing well but the Israeli economy was doing so well that it was fine, despite the fact that Stanley Fisher totally sold us out. He sold all of the gold in Israel. There's no gold left in Israel. Only if people have a chain or something. There's no gold left in Israel. He sold it all. He was an American agent. He was an American Israel lobby agent and during that time, Israel bought a whole dungeon full of dollars that was made to weaken the Israeli shekel. So I'm like, why should I try to? I think they did the same thing with the Swiss franc. Used to be one of the strongest.
Correct.
And now it's like at 25 cents. It's like set, right? Isn't there something like that?
It was devalued 5 years ago by 20% against the euro, and just to please the it's a complex story, but anyway, yeah, it was devalued as well. Yes.
Yeah. So like countries like Israel and Switzerland that are nationalist and have healthy common sense and are not on board with the whole globalist scheme, our currencies, of course, are going to be strong, and these globalists, they don't want that to happen, and so they undermine our governments. And look, so they use the Israel lobby to do it. And I can go so much more. I can go down the rabbit hole with this stuff from that Israel was going to make one of the best fighter jets ever, the Lavi plane, and the Americans shut that down. Or we were going to sell the Iron Dome missile defense system to Poland for billions of dollars, and the Americans shut that down and sold them Patriot missiles, which are less. Unfortunately, the Iron Dome missiles are the most tested missile defense system in the world.
Sure.
Very unfortunately, but that is the truth. And so the Polish had to buy Patriot missiles instead. So this whole military-industrial complex is just like raping my country. The intellectual, like we have something to offer to the world. Like there are lots of countries. I had this guy from Singapore contacting me. He's like, "Oh, in Singapore we love Israel," and he wanted to talk to me. He was like, "Oh, I love everything you're talking about. I love Zehut." I'm having people from and with the direction that my party wants to take Israel in, we can even have peace with countries like. I get Syria. I get Hezbollah. I get them. I can speak to them. I'm learning Arabic. I want to really be able to speak to them,
Well, you have peace. You made peace with Egypt. That was successful.
Yeah, and it even makes less sense because it's like the Sunni countries are the more. It's like everything's backwards. The Sunni countries are the more super like patriarchal, like super like religious extremist countries, whereas countries like Lebanon used to have a Christian majority. They were super open. Lebanon and Israel have so much in common.
Yeah.
Lebanon and Israel should have been, like in the days. My name's Shlomo, and that was King Solomon. His name in Hebrew is Shlomo, by the way. So Shlomo and King Hiram of the Phoenicians. They were ancient allies. There's all sorts of theories, by the way, about different places where the Phoenicians, they were the best sailors in the ancient world, and the Israelites might have gone with them, and that the Phoenicians helped King Solomon build the first temple in 3,000 years ago, and all of that. And we've actually found in Israel, we found cedars of Lebanon that have been botanically and carbon-14 dated, that they were from the first temple period. So it's really fascinating stuff. We used to be friends with the Phoenicians, and the modern Lebanese people. They are descendants of the Phoenicians, and they actually have Canaanite DNA based on archaeological and genetic studies. Anyway, they're more open. You look at Beirut. Beirut looks like Tel Aviv. You have, people dress however they want, and I'm a religious guy. I just got engaged 2 days ago, and my future wife, when we get married. Thank you. But my future wife, when we get married, she'll wear, a head covering, and she dresses modestly and all of that stuff. And so I'm a religious person. I get the religious world as well. I have respect for the Muslim world that they have a value of modesty, and I think that it's a good thing. But I'm okay with a lot of my Jewish brothers. They don't feel the same way, and so if a girl wants to wear a bikini on the beach, then she can go and wear a bikini on the beach. I'm cool. I'm fine with it. So Beirut and Tel Aviv have a lot in common, and it's bizarre that we're like supposed to be enemies of each other. And it started because Israel screwed up. Israel didn't know what it wanted in Lebanon. Israel should have either, said, okay, Israel should have just decided back in the 80s, okay, either we're in charge and we're going to work with, we'll work with the Sunnis, we'll work with the different Christian sects, we'll work with the Shia, we'll work with everyone, like the same way that it's like an emirate where you have like the head of, because Lebanon is not naturally a stable country because it's so divided into different groups. So Syria at one point, was sort of, there's the pro-Syria people. There's Lebanon is a complicated, the Lebanese mud, as it was called. So either Israel should have decided, okay, we're in charge and we're going to work with each community on the community level, and we're going to give them all of their, freedoms and let them, if they want to get Israeli citizenship or whatever. then they can have a path to citizenship. We should have either done that, and then maybe make them have to prove loyalty and all that stuff. We wouldn't want to, become a minority in our own country. Or if we decided that we don't want to be in Lebanon, then once we took out the PLO in a very impressive, 1982, the first Lebanon war, it was good. We were against the PLO. We had them surrounded in Beirut. We had the U.S. and the UN organized a retreat from Beirut all the way to Tunisia. So we won. And then at that moment, we should have decided either we're going to stay and we're going to work with every single minority group in Lebanon, and as sort of like this an Israeli empire that still very small. I mean, if you look at the size of Lebanon, you look at the size of Israel, a very small empire. But if we're going to either stay as like an empire, we're going to work with the different communities, and we're going to be fair to everyone, or we're going to leave. One or the other. I get that most people listening will probably prefer the second. That's fine. That's totally legit. The fact of the matter is, Israel didn't know what it wanted to do. It tried working only with the Christians. At first, the Shiites were happy that Israel came in. The Shiites were throwing rice on the Israeli jeeps when Israel first rolled into Nabatea and other areas. So the Shia loved Israel in the beginning because they said, "Oh, these Jews are going to help us against the Sunnis that have been kicking our butts." But Israel didn't side with the Shia. We only sided with the Christians. So it was like a lot of bad decisions, and the Christians weren't organized. The Christians in Lebanon are split into so it's just a thing of not speaking the language, not acting like a local thing, acting like a Western outpost, not acting not acting like a local Semitic natural part of the scenery. And so we screwed up, and because of us screwing up, the same Shia who loved us at first said, okay, screw this, let's get rid of these foreign occupants, which that's how we were acting, was as foreign occupants. And they made Hezbollah, and they kicked Israel out. And so I get Hezbollah, I get them. Like, most Israelis don't get it. They think that they're all... Now, the thing is that now they've become a useful tool for the Iranians. But at the end of the day, Nasrallah does have a lot of power, and Hezbollah does have power of its own, and so who knows what might happen. I think most of the Lebanese people are against war, and so I think if we'll have to see. Now things are developing up there. I haven't fully been up to date because of Hanukkah and the engagement and other good things going on. I haven't been fully up to date on what's going on exactly with the tunnels between Lebanon and Israel, but we'll have to see what happens, and it might go in a direction of war, and I don't know who will start it. I don't know who's you can't just dig tunnels into our country. We're gonna have to.
Here's why I asked you the question about how you define Israel. Is that first of all, I saw you did a very interesting interview of Odell Yinon. One of the few interviews on the internet of this very interesting guy. He was very influent. He's probably
the only one. Huh. I'm the only one who ever bothered to interview him.
Maybe you should connect me, and I will interview him as well, because it's very interesting what he has to say. And thus the question about how you define Israel, because he obviously, the borders and the definition of who lives in a country, like, for example, what is the definition of an Israeli citizen, all of these things are very important. And as you know, because maybe people who listen to us don't know this, but Jewish people is not one identity. As we say, we have, if you put two Jewish people together, you have at least three opinions. And it's a very diverse culture and people, and in fact, it would be interesting to have your definition. What is to be a Jew? And therefore, what is to be Israeli? Because if you don't have a clear definition, well, then it's open to all sorts of politics and interpretations, and even geographical borders. There used to be a time when I was a kid. There used to be a time when in Israel they were saying, well, we need to have. The reason we need to keep Sinai, the reason we need to have outposts on the Red Sea is to protect, and so this is the imperial logic, where you have to have outposts even further and further, and then you need outposts to protect the outposts, and it never stops. So at what point, because you don't have a definition of what it means to be Israeli, what it means Israel, and what are the limits that you set yourself? So I wonder, what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, so you're saying, what is the land of Israel, basically?
And what is to be an Israeli?
Right. So to be an Israeli is just a nationality. There's no essence of. If our essence is based on some Israeli ethos of Israeli movies from the 60s and I don't know, serving in the army, then we have nothing. We have no ground to stand on. There's no such thing as an Israeli people. The same way that there's no such thing as a Palestinian people. It's just a nationality.
Okay.
Or Americans, you can at least say that there's a culture that's developed for hundreds of years. So maybe you could say that, but the Israeli ethos is nothing compared to the Jewish ethos. The Jewish people is very much something that does exist. So to be a Jew is, and a lot of people get confused on this stuff because of.
Yeah, let's dig that. It's interesting. What does it mean to be a Jew?
First of all, what we call ourselves, and we still call ourselves in our prayers and whatnot, is we do call ourselves Israel. We call ourselves Israel, Am Yisrael, the people of Israel, the sons of Israel, the Israelites. That is. But when did we start? When did Yehuda, Judah, right? The tribe of Judah, the son of Israel, his name, the son of Jacob, his name was Judah, and then he received a portion of the land of Israel. South of Jerusalem, and basically Jerusalem, Hebron, in that area, Judah, and so that's called Yehuda. So someone who is of that tribe is called Yehudi. Very simple.
Yes.
In Hebrew it's simple. In Arabic it's simple.
It's the same.
Yehuda, Yehudi. Very simple. In English it's more complicated because then you have people who say Jew doesn't appear in the Bible. Okay, well it says the men of Judah. Or it depends on your translation of the Bible.
Sure.
There is no one word for Yehudi. It could be Judean. It could be the men of Judah. It could be the tribe of Judah. It could be Jews. It could depend what translation you have. So I've seen all sorts of people saying, "Oh, the Scuffenfield dictionary, they're the only ones who brought in the word Jew," and then their translation of the Bible brought in the Jew. And in other versions of the Bible, there's the word Jew doesn't appear. But then if you look, it says. You look at the same verse, it'll say Judahite or Judean or something like that. So in Hebrew, we don't have this confusion. In English, there is this confusion, but it's not our fault. We didn't create the English language.
Sure.
So with all the things that Jews did create, we didn't create the English language. So that's the Anglo-Saxons or the Germanic tribes that went to the British Isles. So it's not, you can't blame me. So you're very right to say, I agree with you, and I do the same thing as you. First things first, definitions, common language, so we can know what we're talking about. So why did we stop calling, why did we, for the most part, other than our prayers and in our own speaking, why did the nations around us stop calling us Israel and start calling us more Judeans or Jews or Yehudim? The reason for that is in the 8th century BC, Kingdom of Assyria destroyed the northern kingdom of Israel, and the 10 tribes were scattered. A lot of them did come into Jerusalem. We have archaeological evidence that in the same period, the size of Jerusalem, the walls of Jerusalem expanded greatly because there were so many Israelite refugees that came into the land of Judah. Now, in those days, if someone who understands how the ancient world works or how tribal life works even today, if you don't have land, you're not free. You lost your identity. So basically, a lot of the different tribes did come to Jerusalem and other places, but they would have lost their identity over time, and they would have just taken on the name of Yehudi because they were living in now the Mamlechet Yehuda, the kingdom of Judah. So so really in the 8th century we started going by the name Yehudi. So you could say that Jews as a people began began from the destruction of the northern Israelite kingdom and the refugees. So in modern Jews, that means that the Jews of today have all 12 tribes in us, and we've lost. Other than some people who know that they're from the tribe of Levi, or that they know that they're descendants of Aaron and that they're Kohanim, their last name Kohen usually is they're from a subset of the tribe of Levi, so they also are from the tribe of Levi. Other than that, most of us, we don't know what tribe we're from exactly because everyone mixed in together. So we go by the name of Jews, and today they call us, in English, they call us Jews. We still call ourselves Israel. We still call ourselves Yehudim. And so that's what a Jew is. As far as the land of Israel, the fact of the matter is that a united Israelite kingdom existed for a relatively short time. It existed for only a few hundred years. And it expanded. It was between the Jordan and the sea. The main enemies were the Philistines. Today, where the Gaza Strip is, and today they call themselves Palestinians. So some things never change. The name Palestinian, of course, is from the same root as Philistines, Plishtim, Peleshet, yes, which means invaders because they were Greek. They weren't actually local here. They were Greek sea peoples who came here. Yes. That's why they were called Plishtim, foreign invaders. I can go on about this stuff for a long time. What is the land of Israel? On a theological level, you can say that it's between, even in the Bible, there's different borders, and it's an extremely complex thing. When you have the tribal allocations, if you say that the land of Israel is based on the tribal allocations, it's basically the same as Israel's borders are today, if you include Judea and Samaria, and all we would be missing would be like southern Lebanon. If you go according to the book of Ezekiel, it's like the same thing, basically. If you go according to what God promised Abraham, then it's from the Nile to the Euphrates. But that's to Abraham, and Abraham had other descendants, and we know that, for example, the Edomites are the sons of Esau, that they're also descendants of Abraham, or the Ishmaelites are also descendants of Abraham. So what area do they have? They have the Arabian Peninsula. The Edomites have south of the Dead Sea. So it's all mixed up, and at the end of the day, when you really look into the theological matter of it, it doesn't matter. For example, if Syria attacks us and we conquer Damascus, so Damascus will be part of the state of Israel. But if they don't attack us, and we have no reason to fight them, then I have no problem with Syria existing. Sure. Even if for a short time, there's a tradition, for example, that Aleppo, the Jews of Aleppo actually have they have their own version, the Aleppo Codex. This I happen to have a printed Bible that's based on the Aleppo Codex, which is one of the most ancient codified Bibles that has the Masoretic editions, which it allows you to know. There's so many words in Hebrew that if you don't have the vowels aren't written in Hebrew, so you can read the same thing a dozen different ways if you don't have the vowels. So the Masoretic tradition was kept best by the Jewish community of Aleppo in the Aleppo Codex. Anyway, there's a very ancient community in Aleppo, which is near the Euphrates River. So you could say that that's the Euphrates River. A lot of people think that it's the eastern border of the biblical promise. It's not. It's the northern border of the promise. The promised land is between El Arish in the Sinai Peninsula and Aleppo in Syria. That's the promised land. What do you do with that? You can do with that whatever you want. You can decide that you're gonna, as far as what Israeli politicians in general in Israel, no one has any intention to expand between the Jordan and the sea. We want to have a Jewish majority. So, we have plenty of, if we would just apply Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, there are so many empty hills. There's plenty of place to put so many more Jewish villages in those hills, and because of and non-Jewish villages, like there's so much room because of having in reality a military martial law on the ground in Judea and Samaria. There's so much limitation. Jewish, the pro-Israel media, they'll talk about Jewish villages being being destroyed by the Israeli government, and they'll talk about terrorism, and then they'll ignore Arab villages being destroyed, and then the pro-Arab media, they'll ignore Jews getting kicked out of their own homes, and they'll only focus on the Arab villages. So, we have to end. The fact of the matter is that having a martial law is not good for anyone, and even having things like military detention and stuff, that a lot of Jews on the right, they might think that, it's good to have military detention because then we can lock Arabs up. Well, guess what? That same government that you give that power, they then use it to lock up Jews as well. And now in this there was this Jewish small Jewish village called Geulat Zion that was destroyed. And there's this woman there's this Jewish woman who's telling this story that the border police that were Magav, as we call it.
Yes.
The border police that were taking her out, they stripped her clothes off, and it was like almost like this horrible thing. And a lot of these border police guys aren't Jewish, so it was probably Arab police officers doing it. So, and usually they use non-Jewish police officers when they're kicking Jews out of their home. So anyway, and all of the feminists and all of the pro human rights, pro women rights, against violence against women, all of these groups are completely silent when it comes to this case because she's considered on the right and they're considered on the left. So it's this horrible status quo that just needs to end. And I recommend people to watch. If people go onto the Zehut website, they can watch how exactly we plan on doing the one-state solution. What are the numbers really? What are the options we want to give? Basically, if you're not fighting us, you get residency. You have freedom of movement, freedom to work wherever you want, freedom to practice whatever religion you want, and all of the liberties. Not to vote in the Knesset, because we're not stupid. We're not going to hand over the keys to our own country. If someone wants to prove their loyalty and go through a process and be willing to sign up for the draft, we're for a professional military and not having the manual conscription, but still to sign up for the draft and to prove loyalty to the Jewish state, you get full citizenship with all of the duties of being a citizen and also with the privileges of being able to vote in the Knesset. In my opinion, it's better to stay a resident. There's too many having to serve in the army and all these different duties that it takes to have to be an Israeli citizen. I think it's better for the Arabs to stay residents, but that's their choice. And then the third option, of course, if you don't want to stay in Israel, that's fine. We'll even help those people. We'll purchase. The free market will mainly take care of it. I mean, in Gaza, the free market will especially take care of it. I have faith, just from what my understanding of the situation, I have faith that if all we do is take out Hamas and then just say to the citizens of the citizens of Gaza, hey, do whatever you want, I think that the majority of them will leave because already 90% of them want to leave. And even if they can come to Jaffa, to Jerusalem, to Haifa, to wherever, even to places that have Arab populations already, they won't be able to afford the cost of living. They'll prefer to take $100,000 in cash and sell any property that they have and go to some European country that's not having kids and that they want immigration. And again, I'm not for replacing populations or anything like that, but if these countries already are globalists, they already want to take in immigrants. I know Canada, they want 300,000 immigrants every year. So until the Canadian people decide that they don't want that and they elect different elected officials and they change that policy, then the Canadian government is going to take in 300,000 immigrants. So if I have the choice for them to be from Gaza or from Syria or from Africa, so I'm going to do everything in my lobbying power to make sure that they're from Gaza to actually solve this problem, because it's the natural thing. The natural thing, 90% of them want to leave. 50% of them unemployed. 50% of them are poor. And that's poor in Gazan standards. So what will it be in Israeli standards? In Israeli standards, I have to do the math and I have to look at the numbers, but it'll probably be like 70, 80% of them are impoverished. So if you give them money and you say, hey, we're going to buy the cost of someone who has a house in Gaza right now that isn't worth anything, as soon as it becomes part of the Israeli real estate market, it's going to be worth 5 times more. He's going to be able to sell his house, become a millionaire, and live wherever he wants. And he can even live in Jaffa. If he wants to sell his house in Gaza and go move to Jaffa, that's fine too. But if he wants to sell his house in Gaza and go move to Dubai, that's fine too. Whatever he wants. I have faith that it'll work itself out. And our party platform is a little bit more hands-on. But I think even without paying them, I think even without coming and saying, hey, take this money and leave, I think even without it, it'll work itself out, because it's just the facts on the ground. It's just reality.
So, just to be clear, so if let's say if Palestinians or people living in the West Bank or in Gaza, eventually they move to Tel Aviv or Jaffa, are they becoming Israeli citizens?
They'll be Israeli residents,
okay.
And like I said, they'll be able to move. They'll be able to go wherever they want, work wherever they want. If they want to go through a process, we're talking like a 10-year process of proving that you're going to be a loyal Israeli citizen. We're going to do all the background checks. We're not going to let someone who has like a background in, throwing, Molotov cocktails at Israeli military jeeps. As much as we understand that, I would do the same thing if I was living under military occupation. I get it. But now that we're saying, okay, we're starting from scratch, you have residency, you have this, you have that. Still, someone who actually, we've documented that he threw a Molotov cocktail at an Israeli jeep, he's never going to get citizenship. Never.
Okay.
His kid's fine, but someone like that is not going to get citizenship, period.
Now,
someone who was just a peaceful person and was just living his life and whatever, if he wants to get citizenship, he goes through a process. We do the background check. We see he's fine, and he wants to be full on Israeli citizen and sign up for the Israeli draft and all that stuff. Then he can become an Israeli. Then he'll become a full Israeli citizen. He'll be able to vote in the Knesset. And yes, that means that there will be a few more Arab Knesset members. But the fact of the matter is, what will these Arab Knesset members be able to do? Right now, what is the whole agenda of the Arab Israeli Knesset members? It's to create a Palestinian state. So once we come and we say no Palestinian state, what can they fight for? Human rights for the Arabs? I'm for human rights for the Arabs. We can work together. I have no problem.
I believe that
they have nothing left.
I believe
they'll leave the Knesset. They'll leave the Knesset.
I believe the Israeli Arabs and other Israelis that are not Jews have very, very good rights in Israel, right?
Yeah, and I've worked with this guy. His name's Yosef Haddad. It's funny, with his name you could think that he was Jewish, or he's an Arab Christian from Nazareth, a real Nazarene, and his dad's actually a Catholic priest, and he served in the IDF. He fought against Hezbollah. He was injured actually, and what he's doing now is he's making this sort of popular movement, and he's going to Israeli Arabs and he's saying, hey, let's make our own, let's stop trying to fight against, we have enough problems in the Arab Israeli world with crime and illegal weapons and all sorts of, even though, I'm more for, gun rights and stuff, but anyway, he's saying, he's coming from more of like a kind of, he's coming from a different angle, and he's saying, hey, Arabs, let's get our act together. Let's face it, we live a lot better here in Israel than Arabs live in other countries, and let's not be trying to fight against the country all the time. Let's use the politics to advance our own interests. And the Jews, all the Jews love this. The Jews who hear about this guy love this guy, whether they're on the left or the right. Every Jew who hears that there's an Arab who wants to just use Israeli politics to better, Arab society, everyone's for that. If you want to come with us and work with us and not be fighting against us all the time, he has probably more consensus in Israeli society than any Jew does.
Now, sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, so most of them just aren't in this mind. Some of them are in this mindset. I think that most Arab Israelis are probably half agree with him and half, they're probably split. You know, they probably like, hey, he has some good points. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, as long as there are sovereign armed groups like the PLO, which is now called the Palestinian Authority, and like Hamas, as long as they exist, there is going to be this feeling that there's this armed struggle, there's this armed resistance. And so the Arabs, even though the Arabs have Israeli citizenship, they live well here. They know that they live better here than they would in Lebanon or Syria or anywhere else, or the Palestinian Authority. They're still going to have part of them that is part of their heart that's going to go out to their brothers in Bethlehem, in Hebron, in Ramallah. So the best way to really solve this issue is to make these places all under Israeli sovereignty, to not have there be an armed resistance, to just have there be one country with freedom of movement for everyone, with all of the individual liberties preserved, not taking anyone's citizenship away, having a path for citizenship for most of them who aren't actively fighting us. That's what needs to happen.
Now you mentioned, of course, when you got into Israel, you got your Israeli citizenship very fast, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously, and I don't have anything to say against that. So it's easier for someone who is Jewish to become an Israeli than someone else who moves into Israel and goes through the process you described of so many years and so on, right?
Yeah, and you know, if someone says that that's not democracy according to some textbook
sure.
definition, then okay, so it's whatever. You know, that's every democracy has its own. You know, not the UN now wants to make this migration pact where you can just, as soon as you go into anyone is allowed to go to any country. What a bizarre.
Yeah,
just
vanity you don't want that in Israel. And I don't want that in Switzerland.
Bizarre idea that you have this human right that you can go. So someone could say that these people have a human right to automatically be able to be Israeli citizens and to vote for the Knesset members. And I see as a libertarian, I believe in individual God-given liberties.
Sure.
There are no God-given for clear rights, civilian rights that people automatically get. No. In some countries, you have a right to bear weapons, and in other countries, you don't have a right to bear weapons. And so the only thing you can talk about is liberties.
Sure.
So I'm giving them as much liberty as I can without them killing me or killing me politically. You know, so it's like I'm coming towards them as much as I possibly can. If people think that that's not enough, then what people need to understand is that they're asking me to commit suicide, and all I have to say is to give them the finger and say that I'm not going to do that. I don't have anything more to say to that.
Of course, I think that they can have. I'm very happy to give them the privilege to be a tourist, as far as I'm concerned, but not necessarily to settle, nor to work, nor to vote and have political rights. I believe something, and this leads me to. I want to iron out this definition a little bit more precisely. I strongly believe that every people. Every group of people that is defined as a group of people and agrees to be that group of people has, it's not even a right, it will have a land eventually somewhere, because otherwise you don't exist as a group for long. And in fact, the Jewish people is a sort of incredible exception in the history that it managed to consider themselves still being a Jew after 2,000 years of wandering across the world, well, mostly in Europe, of course. But and this is where my question is, why I want to really iron, or at least have your opinion on this question is, you mentioned the definition of being a Jew, and I'm going to push back on you on two levels. First of all, for a lot of people, being a Jew is believing in God, in the Torah, in the Scripture, and there is thousands of variations, of course, of that belief. But eventually, a lot of people say, I am Jewish because I am religious and I believe in such and such scripture and such a belief, which all boils down to the Abrahamic tradition, to the Moses tradition, and you know this much better than me. There is another category of people which starts to be a bit more tricky, is they say, oh, I am Jewish because my family is Jewish and my father or my mother, more importantly, is Jewish. But I don't believe in God. I'm secular. I'm sometimes they're communist or leftist, but I'm Jewish. And so I'm saying, well, okay, so this is a different definition, right? So does it mean it's in the blood? Is it a race? Is it something? Genetics show that it's not really a race. It's more complicated because there is very little link. Or of course, we all are brothers if you go back in time, of course. But I mean, from a Sephardi, from an Ashkenazi, from someone from Yemen, from someone. There is a lot of, and of course, someone from Ethiopia is very hard to say that it's the same race. They don't look the same. They don't. So if you're secular and you're from Morocco, and if you're secular and you're from Russia, and if you're secular and you're from Ethiopia, what allows you to say that you're Jewish? And then there is the third option, which it's someone I have in my family. My sister converted to Judaism to marry. And I must say, I don't think she really believes in really, but she did the process, and it was a liberal synagogue and all that. And okay, they're very happy, they have a family and so on. And they send the children to some Jewish cultural school. So I'm telling to her, well, are you Jewish? And she says, well, of course I'm married, therefore I'm Jewish. And but I say, but a lot of religious people will say that you are not. Are you going to get an Israeli passport if things require you to eventually one day move to Israel? She doesn't know that, but she's Swiss like me. So is it culture then? So I know it's complex, and I know there is probably not an answer, but I was curious to have your answer on that or your opinion on that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Basically, if you look at the history, you brought up the second group, the secular, you brought up that there's Jews from Ashkenaz, from Sfarad, from Yemen, from Ethiopia. If you look closely though at the genetics, you will find that Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews, who that we're talking about over 90% of the Jewish population,
sure,
they are closer to each other than, for example, if white nationalists, they want to talk about a white people that would span. For some reason, I don't know why they don't include Greeks. That's weird to me. But apparently, I've talked to a lot of these alt-right people, these white nationalists that I agree with them on a lot of things. They're saying that there's this such thing as a white race that is from, and I think that there's actually such a thing as an Aryan race. I actually go further than I think there's such a thing as an Aryan race. I have videos where I talk about it and I explain that it's actually what Judaism teaches as well, but it doesn't mean that you have to kill all the Jews. There is such a thing a thing as an Aryan race.
I don't think it's part of the definition for sure. I never heard that, but yeah. I know what you refer to, of course.
Yeah, the name Ireland and Iran, they both mean the land of the Aryan.
Sure.
So there is such a thing as an Aryan race. I don't think there's such a thing as a white European race per se. I think there's an Aryan race. But if you look at the groups that they include in that, they're including everything from British people and until like Polish people. Mm-hmm. And those groups are more different genetically if you look at a genetic map, whereas Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews are actually quite close on a genetic map, and it even changes. There's different communities. There's a region of it, and the reason for those variations is because you had, for example, in Europe, you had Ashkenazi Jews. You had Israelite. Essentially, you had refugees from the land of Israel that were going into Europe, and what we find genetically is that on the Y chromosome there's more Semitic DNA, and on the mitochondrial DNA there's more European. So what that means is that I, as an Ashkenazi, that means that most of my male ancestors would have been descendants of the children of Israel, and I would have had probably some amount of European converts. Like you said, your sister, was it your sister? You said?
Yes, my sister.
So I would have had ancestors that were like European converts, but those European converts, they joined the Jewish people.
Sure.
A lot of ethnic groups have a way to join them,
sure.
Especially when we're talking about an ethno-religious group. If you really want to understand the Jewish people, you have to say that it's something larger than just an ethnic group. It's an ethno-religious group. And for people who think that Jews are just making that up and it doesn't exist, well, you can look at the Druze. You can look at a lot of different Christian groups like
sure.
the Assyrian Orthodox or the Ethiopian Orthodox Christians. These are ethno-religious groups where the religious identity is tied in together with the ethnic identity.
Sorry if I just add something quickly. In fact, a lot of the original Christians were Jewish converting to Christianity, which leads me to actually a fourth category which I forgot, and I'm going to throw it now so that you can comment while you go on your thoughts. Apologies for interrupting. A fourth category would be: what if you're a Jewish person and you convert today to Christianity? Then the question is: are you still Jewish or are you not Jewish? So that's a fourth category for you to comment on. So that's that.
Okay. I remember writing this. I jotted some of this down. So anyway, so basically what this means, if we look at the genetic stuff, if we look at the history, if we try to understand it, of course, there were there really were the Khazarians who converted to Judaism, but it's clear that it's hard to say. I think that they're a smaller percentage of me as an Ashkenazi, of my ancestors. Though I have a friend who was saying that he thinks it's a little bit, who also understands this stuff well, and we were talking about it. He thinks it's like something like 20%. But this straw man that people create because I'm Ashkenazi, I have no Middle Eastern roots. I have no, there were some European women who converted and married Israelite men. There were a Khazarian community that, in that Khazarian kingdom, there were probably a lot of Jews that then moved to that region because it would have been a place that they would have. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at the Yiddish language, which the Yiddish language is the language of the Jews of the land of Ashkenaz, then, which is Germany, Europe, though some people say that Ashkenaz might have originally been a place in Turkey, though.
In the Volga region, to be precise, but Yiddish, you're right. It's the German German dialect, which is actually fun language.
Yeah, it's basically the German language, though it has all sorts of different weird things. There's words like saras, which is from the Hebrew sarot, which is actually a cognate to English sorrows. It's like troubles.
Yes, well, for sure.
You've got lots of words like emisser and emet or emeth in Hebrew is truth. So emisser is like a, with the R at the end, is like in English or in German where you put like a millionaire is like someone who has a million. So an emisser is like someone who has emes, who has truth. So, but that's a Hebrew word. So it's very clear in the Yiddish language that you have a lot of Hebrew words. You have old French words. You've got all sorts of words. And so the fact of the matter is that it's mainly German. If it was a mainly Slavic or Turkic language, then the Khazarian hypothesis would be the predominant hypothesis. Mm-hmm. But because it's basically German with a couple different words added in, then the obvious thing is that that the Rhineland hypothesis is the correct hypothesis. And the Rhineland hypothesis, anyone who looks it up will find that Jews are from the Middle East. We are the descendants of the ancient Judeans. And that doesn't mean that there weren't a significant. Let's say that I'm 20% Khazarian. Okay, so I'm 20% Khazarian. But to have this, but that explains the genetics difference. And then in the Arab world, there might have been some intermixing with local Arabs. So that would explain the slight differences between a Jew, an Ashkenazi Jew, and a Moroccan Jew. But even the fact of the matter is, the first two people that you said was the religious and the secular. The secular Jew says, my parents were Jewish, so I'm also Jewish. But what Judaism says, what the first group, the religion, says is that the secular Jew is Jewish, 100% Jewish.
Okay.
He's 100% Jewish. Even if he's screwing up and he's sinning, he's still totally. That's what Judaism teaches. Is that if you had, and how did it become the Jewish mother? I disagree with that.
Okay.
The original thing is that you need a Jewish father and a Jewish mother.
Okay.
And if one of those isn't, then you have to have some sort of conversion or some sort of thing. That's what the original thing was. We see this in different places in the Bible. Basically, the reason why the halakha, the Jewish law, changed and said, okay, you only need a Jewish mother, was because there were situations where there were pogroms and rapes and things like this, and you might not know who the father was. And there's a huge problem in Judaism because if it's a married woman and a different man makes her pregnant, then the child is a mamzer, is a bastard. And a mamzer has a problem marrying into the people of Israel. So the rabbis had mercy on women that would be raped by a kuzak or something, and they would say, okay, we're not gonna check if the kid comes out with blue eyes and blonde hair. We're not gonna ask questions. He's gonna be raised in the Jewish community. He's gonna be raised as if his mother's husband is his father. We're not gonna ask these questions. We're not gonna go. It's a very sensitive topic, and so because of these situations, that's why Judaism became more lenient and said, okay, you only need a Jewish mother. But the real essence is that you need a Jewish father to teach his son Torah, and you need a Jewish mother. The Kabbalistic ideas of the light and the vessel. You need just like I happen to have. I brought my Chanukiah. You need to have a vessel to be able to hold the light so that the light doesn't go out. Mm-hmm. That's the idea. The light is the masculine, is the Torah, is the teaching, is the wisdom that's passed down. The vessel is the feminine, is the womb, is the binah, is the understanding. You really need both. Judaism is, if you really understand Judaism, it's all about a balance between male and female. You might see some ultra-Orthodox that you might say that that's an extremely patriarchal society, and that there's not much room for a woman to serve God, to have any place in society. You might see other secular Jews that are like totally into feminism and completely no respect for men and all that stuff. But the real inner teaching of Judaism is balance between male and female. The male authority, but the female understanding, and the depth and having a balance between those. So I got into that because of so the definition currently according to Jewish law is that if you have a Jewish mother, you're Jewish. But I really think that we need to change because we aren't having pogroms anymore, and now there's this whole situation where you have Jewish girls who they say, oh, I can. Mainly outside of Israel, they say, oh, I can marry a non-Jew, and it doesn't matter because my kids will be Jewish. But that's not what the rabbis meant a couple hundred years ago. That's not what they meant.
I'm certain that they didn't mean that, for sure.
Yeah, it's not what they mean today either.
Yeah,
I think that rabbis should get their acts together and should make it a Sanhedrin and start renewing Jewish law and make Jewish law not the reform movement, but an actual Orthodox reform, where we're completely steeped in Jewish law and Jewish wisdom, and where we begin, we say Hadesh Yamenu Kekedem, renew our days as in the days of old. What does that mean? Renew our days as in the days of old, when you used to renew our days, when Torah is relevant for the time that you're living in, and it develops and it's connected to reality. That's what it means to renew our days as in times of old. It doesn't mean let's go back and wear and dress the same way that our ancestors. Even though I have no problem someone wants to wear a robe and stuff like that, I have no problem. But it doesn't mean let's go back to the way things were thousands of years ago. No, it means let's be connected to reality now, the same way that thousands of years ago we were connected to reality then. And so I think that the rabbis, once the rabbis get their acts together, we should change Jewish law, and we should actually make it where you need to have a father and a mother. and that there would only be exceptions in extreme situations. And then you brought up conversion. So according to Jewish law, also someone who converts with intention of keeping the commandments, he joins. We're an ethnic religious group, and they're joining our ethno-religious group, so they become fully part of the people of Israel. And that, again, the Jews of Yemen and the Jews of Ethiopia, they most likely have a history that has more conversion in it, the same way that the Jews of Khazaria were, but the Jews of Khazaria mixed in with all of the Jews of Ashkenaz, whereas the Jews of Yemen were isolated, and so that explains why the Jews of Yemen are more similar genetically to the Bedouin than they are to Ashkenazi and Sephardic Jews. But now we're all in Israel and everything's getting mixed together. So the fact of the matter is that we're as confusing as it is, and as much as there are different traditions, if you look at the real essences of the traditions, it's really the same traditions that have been preserved, whether we were in Yemen or in Sfarad or in Ashkenaz. Ethiopians have some different stuff, but they actually kept some of the first temple period traditions better than we did. The Ethiopians really are something else, but they're fascinating. They're very fascinating. But really, the rest of the Jewish people. So we're talking about 99% of Jews in the world really kept overall the same traditions, and really only small insignificant things like when Shabbat ends, you light a candle, right? So if you're in Yemen, you just take a regular candle and you light it. And if you're in Ashkenaz, you take a braided candle and you light it like that. But it's the same tradition. So someone might look at, you have to really be superficial. You have to really be super superficial to not see that it's the same people. You have to really look at like the most unimportant superficial aspects of the differences to not realize that we're talking about the same people. And then you brought up Hebrew Christians, who in Hebrew they're called minim. Basically, in the late Second Temple period and after the destruction of the Second Temple, so we're talking the first and second centuries of the Common Era. You had all sorts of different groups. You had the Essenes, you had Pharisees, you had Sadducees, you had Zealots, you had, and then you had the Hebrew Christians. So there were these different groups that had different relations with each other. And at the end of the day, the Judaism that my ancestors, or any Jew today, his ancestors were part of was the tradition of the Pharisees. And so we can explain it in different ways. We can say that it was by God's will that the Pharisees had the right thing, and so that's why the other minim, the other sects, they disappeared. Or you could say that the Pharisees persecuted the other sects, and so that's why the Pharisees succeeded. Or you could say, and I think that it's more complicated. I think that you had different sects that actually became different religions. So, for example, the Essenes, I believe that the Essenes were the first followers of Jesus, and that they saw that the Pharisees didn't accept that the Pharisees handed Jesus over to the nations, and they said, okay, so we're going to now go into the nations, like we see that Paul went into the nations and spread Christianity, and I think that was also God's will that Paul and Peter would go. Shaul, their names were Shaul and Shimon Kefa, by the way. Shimon Kefa is a very interesting character. He's mentioned in some Jewish texts. There's actually a prayer that Jews read on Shabbat morning, called Nishmat Kol Hai. It's a beautiful poem, and it's actually attributed, according to some Jewish sources, to Shimon Kefa. So that means that Shimon Kefa would have had Peter, the first pope, would have had good relations both with the church and with the Pharisees. So it's fascinating. And Shaul, Paul, he calls himself a proud Pharisee in the New Testament, and the church didn't even censor that. And the church censored a lot of stuff. So it's very fascinating. It seems like, Maimonides, for example, in the 11th or 12th century, I think 11th century rabbi. He says that Christianity is overall a good thing in the world, that it brought the nations closer to belief in one God. Though he said that there's still different, from a Jewish perspective, there are things that are false in the Christian religion. That I'm not like Ben Shapiro, who just says Judeo-Christian, and acts like there's no difference.
Nonsense. It's nonsense.
There is a difference.
Judeo-Christian is a nonsensical concept. I disagree. I would disagree on a lot of things with Ben Shapiro, for sure.
Yeah. I would like to, debate him on some stuff sometime. Though I agree with him on a lot of stuff, but I disagree with him on a lot of stuff.
I also agree with him on something.
And I don't think that we need to try to mix together and make unclear the different identities to try to play the white card. Sure, he's exactly. White. He's white when it's convenient. He's Jewish when it's convenient. I'm just Jewish. I'm not trying to be white and Jewish. My skin is light skin, but I'm not trying to be a white European and a Jew. I'm just Jewish.
It's a post World War II concept. No one used Judeo-Christian before the 1940s, and it's really recent. And also, we probably, this is a different topic. Not for today. We probably needed an alliance between, let's say, as far as I'm concerned, European people and Jewish people. But it doesn't mean that we have to go through reinventing history and say we are the same. Just the same way as maybe, we need an alliance between, Russians and Europeans. And we need an alliance with Japanese. And we need an alliance with Chinese. And I personally think we need an alliance with Africans to do different things. And I love the fact that people are different and that they can talk and that they can exchange and that they can do stuff together, but separately. We don't need to have sex. We don't need to intermarry by force like they're trying to do now. We don't need a lot, but we can do an alliance. We can do respectfully, and we can do with friendship, and we can do it like it used to be when nations were separate. Look,
100%.
I just want to move on the last few topics because we're a bit over time and I don't want to take too much of your time. And I have 20 minutes more and then I have to go. I would go through the last three questions very, very, very quickly. What are your views and of course with your party, Zehut? What are your views about Israel's future, and how do you plan to get your first Knesset seats in the next elections? I mean, generally speaking, what's your views of Israel in the future?
I muted myself in your talk. I think that Israel has to have. I think that the two main things are making our economy more free market, getting rid of regulation, allowing people to have small businesses. That's a huge thing. The other thing is, I think that a one-state solution, it might take us time, but I think that reality is pushing us in that direction because it's clear that there's no... I went to this convention with the biggest, alternative right-wing people who have all their different ideas, and they all said the same thing. And there was even a left-wing guy, Eitan Kabel, who spoke at the thing, and he said the same thing. They're all saying the same thing. They're all saying that we should annex part of Judea and Samaria and then still make a Palestinian state or a Palestinian autonomy or something like that. So, or it's all spins on the status quo. None of it is actually changing the status quo. So none of those. So unfortunately, the people in Knesset have no alternative. Fortunately, that means that people who are looking for an alternative are going to be drawn towards the Zehut party. Now, Zehut, most of the people in are wearing these kind of kippahs. The knitted kippah. They're the people who are in the middle of between the secular society and the ultra-Orthodox society. But basically the people who are in the knitted kippah world, who serve in the army but also, try to live according to Torah, they all know Feiglin, they all know Zehut, and they're only like 10% of the population. So the ones who are pro Zehut are pro us. The ones who say he's got good ideas, but it's always but. They all none of them will say anything. I'm just against it. It's always I like his ideas, but he's a megalomaniac.
We like the but. It's okay.
He wants to be prime minister. That makes him a megalomaniac. Okay, so what you're saying is anyone who's not Netanyahu, who wants to switch Netanyahu, is a megalomaniac. Like, that's called giving an alternative. Like, it's really, you can't win with these people. Anyway, what we do find is we're finding that we're having a lot of success in the secular Tel Aviv kind of world, where a lot of them have woken up. A lot of them are into like free market economics, or like the voucher system and education that we're offering, where anyone, a lot of them are, these secular people are going to this, this party that has a lot of people with kippahs like mine, because they know that we are, since we're trying to get the government out of our lives because we know it's bad for us, they're saying, hey, the government's bad for us too, because we're afraid that the government's going to get so right-wing and so religious, they're going to start forcing us to have religious education. And so these secular people are joining us. And then on the ultra-Orthodox side, we're finding more and more support where they're saying, oh, you want a professional military? We don't want to serve in the military. Oh, that's right. Oh, you want to have, they also like the voucher system in education. They also like that we're going to solve the housing crisis, because they're having a hard time, finding houses, especially in crowded ultra-Orthodox communities. So we're finding that it's like kind of like the Jewish saying, Ein Navi be'iro, there's no prophet in his hometown. We're finding that in the national religious knitted kippah camp that we've kind of done what we can, and that in the rest of Israeli society, which is the other 90% of the population of this country, we're actually having more success. And of course, there's the people who live near Gaza who are sick of having rockets and all of this crap fired at them, and so we're saying we will take out Hamas, we will make Gaza part of the state of Israel, and so then they like us too. So we have potential with so many different groups. If you really look at Israeli politics, it's completely identity politics. It's completely divide and conquer, and we're the first ones who are coming. We're giving like a full Jewish Israeli alternative. And even Arabs, there's some Arabs who like what we're saying as well, because there's Arabs that also get it. So we're really the first party that's coming and offering something for everyone, much more than, the Likud has become just a special interest. They're like neocons, they're just a special interest group party, and their voters are, I don't have any, a lot of my friends vote for Likud. They're people who are pro-Israel, who get the complexities, but they say they don't see a viable alternative, so they say we're going to stick with what we've got, and right now Likud is the best thing we've got. And I agree with them. Likud is the best, is the least of the evils. But I wouldn't vote for it again, because it's so corrupt that I'm done with doing the lesser evil thing. I'm with Zehut, which is a straight up good party that I agree with 99% of the platform. And like, even if we don't succeed, our platform, these 300 pages, Liot Yehudi Chofshi, to be a free Jew, these 300 pages, this is what needs to happen. I don't care if it's us or if it's some awareness that happens and people start doing it through a different party, or if the country collapses and is restarted and we restarted according to this. I don't care how it happens. This is what needs to happen. This is the future of Israel.
I will put the link below.
Yeah, this is what needs to happen. We have everything on the website in English. We have 3 different really great videos. And I'm a candidate for this party. I'm running for the Knesset, as Piero said at the beginning. And
I wish you to win, so that I can boast that I will have talked to 2 member of Knesset, it would have been you. And another one I talked in the past was Uri Avneri, which I think is from the opposite political spectrum. From the left. And, however, he passed away. He passed away recently, I believe. So yeah. But he was a very famous Israeli leftist activist, and I had some agreements on peace and against war with him. But I also had a lot of disagreements on his views of politics and economics. But such is life. Maybe a second to last question that I have for you is: what can Europeans or American nations learn from the Israeli experience as a nation?
I think that, I don't like the situation in Judea and Samaria where we have all of these checkpoints and these fences and walls and barriers and stuff like that. And I don't like that, but and I'm trying to end that. But on our border with, for example, Egypt, or our border with Syria, or our border with Jordan, on our borders with other countries, we have good fences. We have soldiers on the borders. We defend our borders. So that's one. So we need to separate. The first thing is to separate. People say, take a picture. Oh, you want walls? You want to be like these checkpoints and all this stuff? No, the checkpoints, that's not good. We need to end the Israeli. We need to end the martial law. We need to have civil Israeli law. But the checkpoints everywhere and infringements on freedom of movement within the country is not good. But as far as when you have a country and when you have borders, having those borders is a good thing. So the fact that we had all these Africans who were trying to come into Israel, we built a wall with Egypt. We had these Syrian refugees that wanted to come into Israel. We built a wall. We built a very good. It's not a wall, but it's a very good fence. It's a double fence, and it's high and it's good quality. And you have soldiers that patrol it. And so if someone comes and tries to cut, we have cameras. We have fence, camera, soldiers who are in the area who can come and deal with anyone trying to come into our country. So that's something that Western countries can definitely learn from us. I think that in a postmodern world, I think that spirituality is very much an important. I don't think that secularism I don't think some sort of ism like libertarianism or communism. Obviously, I'm not for communism, but libertarianism or conservatism. I don't think that these isms are necessarily our salvation. I think that there's a lot of esoteric truths that are coming out. Truths that have been hidden and have been kept in smaller traditions that are now coming out, and people are sharing them on YouTube and things like this. And as anyone who watched the past hour and a half or however long I've been on for can tell, I'm very much a spiritual person. I study Kabbalah, I study Torah, I study Hasidic Judaism, and these are very big parts of me. And I see that these teachings are things that are good. They're good teachings, and they're teachings that are good for everyone. Now, we used to have. It's interesting. They say that when the walls of Jerusalem were breached, the places after we rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem, the places where there were breaches, they were turned into gates. So you can use something that was negative, and you can the idea of hamtakah, sweetening a curse and turning it into a blessing. So you can use the breaches, you can turn it into a gate. So originally we weren't supposed to. So the original Jewish tradition was to not teach Torah, to not write down the oral Torah, to keep it only verbally oral. That's why it's called oral Torah, to not write it down. That was broken with the Talmud. It had to be broken because Jews were being so persecuted that if we didn't write down the Talmud, originally the Mishnah, later on the Talmud, if we didn't write it down, all of our traditions would be lost. And I encourage people to actually read the Talmud and not like the Talmud is like this like huge thing, and then people find like these quotes about like Jesus. I actually have a video about the quote about Jesus in boiling excrement. It is a quote, but it's more. I have a 20-minute video if people want to go into my YouTube and watch it. But still, it's like this much, and then people find like the quotes that they don't like. If I were to do the same thing with Christianity or Islam, I would think that these were the most terrible religions. It's like, guys, open your minds. If people were to read different places in Talmud, they'd find lots of good teachings, wise teachings, things that the Western world did not get to these truths 2,000 years ago. I mean, it's amazing that the Jewish people had some amazing wisdom, and I'm proud of it. I'm very much proud of it. And so there's the first thing was not to write down the oral Torah. Well, we wrote it down. Well, it's good. It's a good thing that we wrote it down. The next thing was to there's 4 revolutions in Torah learning. The next thing was to not receive money for Torah study. But because of also persecution and stuff, there were situations where people needed to beg for money so that they could study Torah. And so that actually allowed, because there were some Jews funding other Jews to study Torah, that actually allowed Torah study to get developed more. So that was something that was forbidden, that when it became permitted, it was actually a good thing. The next thing was teaching women Torah. It wasn't exactly forbidden to teach a Jewish woman Torah, but it was decided that it was better not to. But in the ultra-Orthodox world, that revolution happened in the last couple hundred years, Beit Yaakov, and today the 4th revolution in Torah learning is to actually teach non-Jews Torah, and so there's many rabbis that are teaching. There's so much wisdom. I think that a truth seeker should seek wisdom wherever it is, whether it's in Hinduism or Judaism. The Jewish people really have a special tradition. I encourage people to watch some of my videos. Don't go into it so much. You can go to there's different websites, like there's the Kabbalah Center, and there's the inner.org where they teach Kabbalah, and these are things. The word Kabbal actually comes from Kabbalah, because Kabbalah used to be taught in closed circles. It was an esoteric wisdom. It was taught in closed Kabbals. But today, the biggest Torah scholars have said, today everything's out there. We've got internet, this, that, everything's out there, and there's so much bad information out there that we can't be esoteric anymore. We have to go out there with everything. So now that's like the 4th revolution in Torah learning, that we are just completely open, and so that's, I think, that the biggest thing that Israel has to offer is Torah. And then, of course, there's lots of Israeli startups and innovation, as you're aware of, and that's also a sort of good news. That's a sort of gospel, but it can be used, if it's not used with the right spiritual values. I'm afraid that those if we don't have the right spiritual values and the right political values of liberty, those same technologies that can be used for amazing liberty and for awareness and life-affirming technologies, those same technologies can actually be used to enslave us, like we see with internet censorship and all of these things. And unfortunately, some Israeli companies and some aspects of Israeli lobbies and whatnot are part of that. And, we have people in the Israel lobby that are part of censorship. And so that's not us being a light to the nations. That's us screwing up. Yeah. So we have to be connected to the Torah to know how to act morally, and to be, what we do will be good for the Jewish people, and it will be good for the nations. The real root of anti-Semitism is Jews screwing up, because the nations do expect something from the people of the book. They do expect something from us, and when we screw up, they're going to be more against us than if another people screw up, because they have better expectations of us. The double standard, as it would be, is based in truth. It's based in expecting a gospel, a good news from the Jewish people. And I hope that we can get our act together, and I hope we can give it to the nations of the world.
So perhaps last question is, my father used to be a good friend of Shimon Peres, and I remember when I was younger, almost a kid, I remember him talking at home for dinner about the future wars for Israel would be about water, and that was something that struck me as I was writing my best-selling book about surviving the economic collapse. And I did mention, especially in the English version, I mentioned Israel in a special chapter about the importance of securing water supplies for individuals, but also for nations. And as you may know, my book talks about, it's a special way of survivalism, of prepping for people, but also for nations. And I think that Israel, from the old days, from Masada to kibbutzim, and even to the modern ways, has integrated a lot of ideas about survival and about how you secure the resources that you need to survive. Now, I don't know if if you can make it short, and then we'll close on this. What's your view, if any, of Israelis, or if it is a topic that is discussed in Israel, about these ideas of survivalism?
I think that the survivalism and the tribalism are very strong. I think that it's a healthy thing. It's something that needs to be balanced, because if you're too tribal, then you start not having. You can act immorally because you don't care about anyone who's not part of your tribe, and I think Jews occasionally are guilty of that. Though other peoples are guilty of that as well. You know, sure. not just Jews.
The Germans did something like that as well. Yes.
Yeah. So tribalism is a good thing. It's a healthy thing. It's a natural extension of the individual. There's the individual. There's the family. There's the clan. There's the tribe. There's the nation. It's a healthy, natural thing. I feel bad for people who don't feel like they're part of some sort of tribe. I feel bad for them. I feel like they're missing part of their identity. I'm glad to know that I have a tribe. I'm glad to know that, you know, when I see all the time people who need help to get, paying for a wedding or get because they're sick or they're poor or whatever, and I see crowdfunding go up, and people give because that's a part of the beauty of the tribal identity, and I feel bad for people who don't have it. So we're tribal. We are a tribalist. We are a tribe. We are a tribalistic people, and so part of that is so there's a natural survival instinct that's part of that. Whereas the West, Yefet, the Japheth, one of the three sons of Noah, he's the father of the Aryan race. The Greek god Iapetus, according to Josephus, they took one of their own ancestor and they just deified him, but he was really a man. He wasn't a god originally. And he's the father of the Aryan race, which, like I said at the beginning, it's from Ireland to Iran, and perhaps even further than that. God gives a blessing to Yefet. He says that he will extend his Japheth's borders. But whereas Shem, Semitic peoples, Shem, what does Shem mean? It means name. It means name. It's like fill in your name. It's like name, Shlomo Gordon. Name. Like Shem. You know, like it's your name is name. Imagine calling your kid name. So Semitic peoples, they have a name. They have an identity. They have a language. Semitic languages are based on 22, you know, Hebrew, for example, has 22 letters, and every word has a 3-letter root. So these are words that are based on a root. That root has an essence. It's like each letter is its own frequency, and you have the 3 letters make its own like carrier wave and its own essence. So each word everything truly in Semitic languages has a name, has an essence to it. Whereas Japheth, which is the Aryan race, they tend to create new languages, and they're more flexible with languages. The Greeks came up with a lot of words. They coined a lot of words. They invented ideas. They put a lot of ologies and isms, and that's great. But with all of those ologies and isms, you can get lost and you can lose your own identity, and you can spread out to. Japheth has truly been spread out as prophesied in the Bible. From America and Canada to Australia, all across the world, there's the Aryan race has arrived, has gotten there, but they can sometimes lose their identity because they get spread out so much, and they come up with these ideas and they come up with these technologies. Sometimes they can lose their own identity, and when you lose your identity, you can forget your survival instinct. And I think that that's what we see with these European countries, these Aryan countries that are bringing in these immigrants, is that they've lost their survival instinct and they're not thinking clearly. And so that's something also that I think that they could learn from us, or they could learn from Arabs also. Arabs have it very strong. Arabs have it strong. Middle Eastern people in general have it. Semitic people, though the Persians are Aryan, but they have this, because they have Islam, they're a little bit more, traditional. But the Arabs especially have this tribalism, we can see in the Arab world it goes to a bad place. They're not able to create nation states. We Jews also have a similar problem. We're trying to learn from the goyim. We're trying to learn. What my party is doing essentially is trying to do what the Aryan nations have done and make nation states for the Jewish people, because we're so tribal. Even within our own Jewish nation, we're split into these different ultra-Orthodox and secular and this and that and left and right and so we're kind of similar to the Arabs in that way, that we're not able to make a real nation. So on one hand, you can have a nation state, but on the other hand, you lose the tribal identity. So it's a very fine tightrope that I feel like you and I are really walking on the same tightrope, just in different people in different countries. I think Switzerland is a good. I think that European countries should take an example from Switzerland and try to be more like Switzerland. And I'm of course pro-Brexit and all of that stuff. You asked about water also. Water is a problem here. I think that the government is very involved in agriculture, sure. And so it subsidizes a lot of water for stuff like bananas. I don't need to grow bananas in the Middle East. They use a ton of water. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the free market. I feel like here's something where libertarianism is just the way to go, where it's just like, okay, how about we let the farmers go, let them grow whatever they want and do whatever they want, and not put a ton of taxes on them, and then not subsidize them, and then not subsidize their water. And then I think we'll see that in Israel we have plenty of agriculture, and we're not losing our, oh my God, we have to protect the farmers because the Arabs will take over that land. No, I think we'll find that everything's A-okay. Instead of growing bananas, they'll grow carrots or something that needs less water, and then water will be more expensive because it's not subsidized. And then so people will use less water in agriculture, if water ever gets expensive enough, then what people will do is they'll just grow crops. There are places in Israel where they just grow crops that they don't water them, and they just hope for a good year of rain. And that's actually what the Torah says, is that it's not like the land of Egypt. You can't irrigate it. It's a land of hills and valleys, and you have to be dependent on God to give you rain. So if people are atheists and they don't believe in God, that's fine. But even economically, you can understand if water is expensive enough, sure, then it will economically make sense to. All you can do is pray. I mean, if you don't believe in praying, then don't pray. It's fine. You don't have to pray. But you have to look up. Either way, your eyes are looking up to heaven. If you're looking to God in heaven, or if you're looking just for clouds to form, either way, your eyes are looking to heaven. You don't have any choice, and you have to hope for the best. And the fact of the matter is that Israel imports a lot of food. We export some food, so it's not like we have this. There's almost no. There only very big countries grow all of their stuff in there, and even then they still import and export some food. So as long as we're not, if we ever had like some big embargo on us and we were completely cut off from the outside world, then we'd have to change our diets, because some of the stuff that we are used to eating we don't grow here.
I hope you grow chickpeas, because hummus is good in Israel.
Yeah, I think we do grow here.
That's good. At least you can keep that.
Yeah, at least we can have the hummus. Though we might not have bread to eat it with, so we have to start growing more wheat. But anyway, the fact of the matter is that Israel, thank God, has we're our own country. We have diplomatic connections with countries all over the world, in the East, in the West, and we have to find balance there as well. For example, I'm for the Chinese building their new Silk Road going to Africa through. It has to go through Israel. It's not an Israeli conspiracy or something. It simply has to go to Israel, and Israel has agreed because it's good for Israel. It's obvious that it's good for Israel, but we have to be careful not to let the Chinese have too much influence here, because they are a totalitarian regime. And in general, I hope that America is really great again and is strong and all of that stuff and is able to stand up to China, because I don't want to live in a world where China is the new I'm hoping that with the wealth in China, that the middle class in China will grow, and that they'll want liberty and they'll want to be like America. And I'm really hoping for that, and that they will get rid of they will have some political liberalization in their country, not just the economic liberalization that they've had. And I really hope that happens. I hope that they have their own individual freedom for them. And I'm concerned because the censorship that they have on the internet in China is very scary, and I don't want to live in that kind of world. And so I'm very wary about China. At the same time, if America is strong, and if Israel is strong, and of course America has its own interests and Israel has its own interests, if, for example, there's ever a war between the U.S. and China, and it's China is the bad guy in this story, and America is the good guy in the story, and Israel is an ally of the U.S., then we could, for example, we could shut down the railroad going from Africa to Asia. We could use China by wanting to build a railroad through Israel is upgrading Israel, and that strength is strength. We can use that strength to support China, we can use that strength to support us, and we can use that strength to support America. We can use that strength for whatever we want, but that is power. To be able to connect Africa to Asia is a big power, and so we can use that as a leverage against the Chinese as well. So we can use it if we say, hey, China, stop putting Christians in concentration camps, or stop harvesting organs, because we are a just Jewish state, and we are trying to be a light to the nations, and so we're going to demand that of you. Then we will have some leverage to really be able to put some diplomatic pressure on China. Unfortunately, Israel in the current state is, in some ways, we're a light to the nations, but in some ways, we're really a screwed up country.
Yeah,
so,
there was this scandal of Israeli harvesting of organs in Kosovo in the 2000s.
So how can you be a light to the nations when you're busy doing it on your own? We're working on it. We're really working on it.
Sure. Well, I wish you the best. Again, I will put the links to your page and to your channel below the description. We originally wanted to do 45 minutes. We're almost 2 hours. Maybe we'll do it again then next year. You'll probably be busy with the election process, but I wish you the best. And maybe we'll talk again on Israel and survival and all of that. So Shlomo Gordon, thank you very much for your time. And,
thank you so much. It has been a great time.
And we'll speak again. Toda, and happy Hanukkah. It's what, day number 4? Day number 5?
Yeah, today will be night number 4. I gotta fill this one with oil and.
Good. So a few more days to go.
Yeah. Okay.
Take care.
All right, bye.